Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a timeless classic beloved by all, which has truly... Wait, hold on a second. Those are the wrong clips. There we go. Now, Snow White, that's the 1937 version, was a technological marvel for its time, a visual spectacle. Aside from spawning an endless stream of revenue from toys, books, and theme park rides, and a subpar remake, it helped launch Walt Disney Studios from the relatively well-known children's short film studio to the global powerhouse it is today. But how can one film have so much influence? What techniques did they use while making the film that is still used today? And what did Charlie Chaplin think of the film? Stick around to find out. It's widely accepted that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or as I like to call it, Snow White and the Six Directors, was the first feature-length animated film, but this actually isn't true. In fact, the oldest surviving animated feature film is 1926's The Adventures of Prince Achmed, directed by Lotte Reiniger, who, aside from being a pioneer in silhouette animation, didn't need 5 backup directors. In fact, Snow White wasn't even the first animated feature film with synchronized sound. That title is held by Kirini Christiani's 1931 film Peludopolis. Then why is Snow White so significant? Well, it was the first animated feature film to feature a full Technicolour process. As you can see from Prince Achmed, that film did feature colour, but that was just a colour tint added to the film after the animation was complete. However, for Snow White, each frame was painstakingly hand-painted before it was photographed. But this isn't the only thing which sets it apart. For animated films of the time, the backdrops were nothing more than 2D paintings, which worked well, but had the problem that all objects would move as one. For example, in this video, a camera moves closer to one of these backdrops and, as in real life, the scenery grows when you approach. However, so too does the moon, which doesn't normally happen when you're walking down a lane, unless you're in Moonfall. And so, inventor and Imagineer Bill Garrity created this.
The Multiplane Camera.
The way it worked was simple. The scenery in the background was separated, each being painted onto their own clear glass panes, depending on their proximity to the camera. Each piece of glass could be moved individually. The objects closest to the camera would move quickest, and objects further away would move more slowly, or in the case of the moon, not at all. As you can see, this fixes the issue of the moon growing on approach, and it also gives the images a much greater sense of depth. However, Garrity's invention wasn't completely original, because he was heavily inspired by the device used to add depths to the adventures of Prince Achmed. However, the panes for this film couldn't move, so the effect wasn't quite as convincing. The Multiplane Camera was first used on Graham Hyde and Wilfred Jackson's The Old Mill as part of Disney's Silly Symphonies series in 1937, and the device was so successful that it was used for every single 2D animated Disney film up to and including Ron Clements and John Musker's The Little Mermaid in 1989. After this, the effects were still used, but they were made digitally instead. However, this wasn't the only new practice that was created for Snow White. In order to accurately capture human motion, a great deal of reference footage was recorded, including some of the dances and drunken walks which would be used for Dopey. Additionally, footage was recorded of some of the animators wearing large papier-mâché heads in order to more accurately capture the scale of the dwarfs. However, after the release of the film, most of this footage was destroyed, meaning unfortunately there's not very much that we can view today, but I have got some clips here for you to view. Frank Thomas, who animated for Disney up until 2001, including animating for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, said in an interview in 1993, Walt was desperate for money at the time and he said, "We've got to find the cheapest possible way to make this picture." Doing animation over again if it was wrong was terribly expensive, so we had to figure out some way to do it right the first time. By shooting the live action, the director and animator could look at the footage and say, "This part is right, this part is not right, it needs to be faster," and so on. And if you had good live action to start with, it would make your job a whole lot easier to get some imagination out of it. And the technique was so effective that it's still used today, as you can see from this footage, which may appear to be footage of torture, but is actually reference footage for Dan Scanlon's 2020 Pixar film, Onward. The footage was taken so that the animators could see how a pair of legs would move and interact with the world on their own. And to think, it's a technique which was created because Disney was strapped for cash. And these techniques made Snow White a smash success, grossing around $8 million, which is roughly $174 million today, on a budget of $1.5 million. But that's not all. In 1937, animated films were widely considered to be children's cartoons, which, to some extent, they still are seen as today, but this was the first film which really proved that wrong. At the film's premiere, Charlie Chaplin said that it even surpassed our high expectations. In Dwarf Dopey, Disney has created one of the greatest comedians of all time. And years later, Sergei Eisenstein referred to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs as the greatest film ever made. Walt Disney proved that animation could be a serious film medium by creating a film which not only broke boundaries, but also holds up as a very well-made film almost 90 years later, something that they clearly can't replicate today. Did you know about any of these techniques? Are there any that I've missed? Please let me know how amazing this video was in the comments below. And feel free to hit the like button, not the dislike button, we don't like that one. And why not subscribe too while you're at it? That's all for now, and I'll see you around.